Here we go. Yo, welcome to the stream. I am Huge. This is my co-anchor, co-founder, Rel. This is the Underserved Movement, and today we have a special guest, a one hell of a golfer, one hell of an educator, a two-time, not once, but twice, Teacher of the Year, Mr. David Peña. Mr. Peña, in the building.
How are you? You called me David Peña. That's my brother.
You already messed up, bro. You got the name wrong, bro.
Oh, Daniel. That's
I don't know.
All
right.
Why David.
Well, I have a brother named David, so that's okay.
No, Mr. Peña, though. Mr. Peña, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about you and just what is it you do?
So I'm an English teacher, language arts teacher at Garfield High School. I've been teaching there a little over 20 years. It's the only school I've ever taught at. I love it there. Garfield is one of the two alternative schools in Sandy Unified School District. Small school, great school. And I had the pleasure of teaching you some years ago. So,
Facts.
This is so I'm excited to be here chatting with you about what's happening.
Great, man. And I this is so awesome that we have you here from a teacher's perspective with everything going on and the tragedies of school shootings.
Yeah.
And I just want to run, first of all, how do you feel about this crisis of school shootings? Because we've had them since I was going to class at your school with Columbine and everything happening on, but progressively have been kind of steadily increasing. And tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. What's the feeling for a teacher at the education level? Like, what's the common feeling amongst educators?
It's just it's kind of an odd feeling, a bizarre feeling. We like, for example, we were talking just for so there was a backfire. Like, we're near the 5 freeway, and there's a car driving by, boom, big old backfire. And then that just started a conversation. We started talking about, oh my gosh, what would happen if, and then a young man in my classroom goes, Mr. Peña, there was just a shooting. It was Uvalde. And it was like, wow, and, it's just something I really do think about. I think about, okay, I keep my door locked. My partner's got a door where I can get into his room. Is his door locked? What do we do? Do I grab, I go look outside to get students in. So it's just some crazy thing that I really wish I didn't have to consider and think about, but it's there. And the students will share stories of lockdowns they've been in, or things like that. So yeah, it's just nuts. And the last time we had the police department came and gave us their, presentation, here's what you need to do. I was really, nothing against the officer who was doing, the training, but I was just thinking, oh my God, really? Is this, because now the direction is to not be a passive victim. It's to fight back. But I'm thinking, what does that even look like, do we all charge the dude with the gun? I don't know,
Right.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that our school occupies kind of a funky little geographic space.
Yeah.
People just don't know about us. They don't mess with us. So, I'm grateful for that. But yeah, it's a terrible thing to have to consider.
So let me run by you one of the ideas that have been floating around, as a solution. And one of them that I hear constantly being yelled at the top of mountains is to give the teachers guns.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering, would you be willing to holster a 38 Magnum or something light? And how do you feel about carrying a 9 or a Glock or something like that on your persons, since they want you to be proactive about a shooter? They want you to be proactive.
Stupidest thing I've ever heard, and that's saying a lot. Maybe not, because there's been some stupid things lately. But oh my God, I asked the students, I say, you want me strapped? You want me to run around here with a gun? I'm going to be, I don't know how, I'm going to go with an old reference, but I'll be Barney Fife from the Andy Griffith Show and just blast up, shoot myself in the foot before anything else happens. Yeah, it's just, the solution to everything for folks who are in the gun lobby is more guns. So,
Right.
And it's the antithesis. Lewis Carroll, the guy who wrote Alice in Wonderland, I think it was Behind the Looking Glass, where everything's reversed. It's like opposite world. It's the greatest trick the devil ever played was convincing you he didn't exist, and that's the NRA. They're just more guns. No.
Right. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I another solution is to make the curtains bulletproof or and like you said, to be more proactive. They want you to like line up against the door like a SWAT, so when he comes in, the first student goes for the barrel, the second student charges the his hands, and the teacher karate chops him, just a whole bunch of ridiculous answers that really here on the underserved movement, we've been asking for preventative measures.
Mm-hmm.
To prevent these things from happening, because there's a constant theme of kids being able to have access and to be able to purchase these guns, and somewhere in this conversation it's constantly lost in interpretation on the receiving end, being you can't take my guns. And I literally just like this kind of ask them, well, here's my proposal. Increase the age to 25 before they're able to purchase a weapon, or anybody's able to purchase a weapon, right?
Yeah.
And do detailed, extensive background mental evaluation checks. And those two things it's what I constantly kept repeating, but somewhere in their translation, they just feel like they're taking away guns. And I, from your perspective, you being an English teacher especially, because there's just a constant failure to communicate on both ends. Do you feel that what would you change about someone's approach? I guess what would it be some advice for me to be able to deliver a message?
I think the most recent thing I've heard, which is really pretty powerful, is reframe the conversation to gun safety, not gun control. I think that's important, where we're talking about safety rather than controlling things. There's, if you ask any English teacher, any teacher, they have these quote unquote evergreen lessons, things they can just bring out all the time that work. They're just good lessons and they work. And sadly, one of my evergreen lessons is this article by Nick Kristof, who formerly of the New York Times, now he's just an independent journalist. And he wrote extensively, here's some things we can do right now to help make guns safer. And he uses the automobile analogy quite effectively, where, we didn't, when a lot of people are dying in car accidents, we didn't outlaw cars, we just made them safer. And so, the technology to make guns safer is there. You can make guns that require a fingerprint, and when you grab it, it'd be only your gun. With the, you can get a license to drive a car, but you should have a license to get a gun. It makes perfect sense.
Right.
So I, rather than ticking off every point that he makes in his argument, it's very well reasoned. He even provides strategies for having a dialogue with folks who will be very entrenched, and say no, you're infringing on my Second Amendment rights, and this, that, and the other thing. So that one I break out all the time. We broke that out right after Uvalde. We read about that. But I remember when I was looking at the students, when they were, when I'm teaching this and we're reading this, we're going through this article, they almost had like a glazed look on their eyes, like, oh my God, here we go again kind of thing. And, but I think it's really important. These are the voters of tomorrow, and some are the voters of today. And they need to know this is, we're not powerless. There are things we can do, and we need to reframe the conversation. I'm pleased to see there was some legislation,
Yeah.
Following Parkland, I really follow those kids and the parents, because they're very vocal. Particularly Fred Gutenberg. His daughter Jamie was murdered at Parkland, and he was happy about this legislation. So that was a good sign to me. Just something, we need something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. At this point, we'll take anything.
Correct.
And you're 100% right. Just the legislation, at least, just wind going in that direction. Just wind blowing in that direction is good.
Yeah.
And it's just a sad situation. And going to Uvalde, and I never am able to pronounce it.
Uvalde.
Yeah, Uvalde. But how do you feel about the situation with law enforcement there? That the way it all just kind of unveiled itself, and the lack of action, and then just, it just, and then a two-parter. They follow up before it unveiled itself. One of the suggestions, other than teachers having 38 Magnum specials, was to put a cop at every entrance of every school, and or put military, put PTSD retired veterans, give them guns and make them stand a post at every school, and give them jobs. Like these were just some of the suggestions for solutions for some of this stuff. But then when it all turned out, and it all just unmasked itself of these cops that failed to act, and was kind of picking and choosing and not letting certain cops that were actually willing to go in, and the way it all just went down, it just proved to me that some cops may have them in them to protect and serve, but others don't. So I just wanted to get your kind of, how do you feel learning that of the debacle that became?
Hey, Huge, real quick, I'm sorry, I was gonna to jump off of that conversation. There was even arguments that came out where they were showing the police agreement where they're like, it's not our job to protect anyone. And I don't know if you saw those videos going around where it was like, it's not our job to protect anyone. It's just our job to police, you know what I mean? And it's, which threw me off, because it's actually written in their I don't know if it's bylaws or whatever it is they agree to, but it says not putting their lives on the line for anyone else. And it just threw me off, because it's always protect and serve. You see it on their cars and everything, And it came out that they were like, no, our job isn't to protect, it's just to serve, essentially. So yeah, it was an interesting argument to add on to the tragedy.
Real quick, the Supreme Court ruled a while back that they're not obligated to save anybody.
Yes, there you go. And it was basically yep.
But they have protect and serve on the side of your car. It's kind of like, yeah. That's like slapping a gym sign on my house. It's like false advertising.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Absolutely. How's that not false advertising? But how do you feel, Mr. Peña?
About that situation, it seems like there's a lot of secrecy, still. They haven't divulged what's going on, which, really speaks to the fact that they don't want to tell the truth. So that's sad. In my own life, I've had, positive and negative interactions with police, but I certainly love the fact that I can call somebody, hopefully, who's there to protect and serve if need be. If there's some nonsense going down, then, I have a lot of respect for the folks who do take their job seriously. But I think it just goes to show that this whole myth of a good guy with a gun will stop a bad guy with a gun. There's, again, a lot of data that shows that's just simply not true. Mm-hmm. Even with the best intentions, they're always outgunned, almost always outgunned. You have these automatic weapons that they're trying to, save people's lives, and they're just, you know, those folks don't have a chance, let alone those kids. So, you know, about those particular police officers, I don't know. There's a whole group, and, you know, I'm sure there are different actors, different motivations, different things. But if you're not willing to do that, then, you know, you shouldn't have that job. And it sucks to say that, because I wish their lives weren't at stake either. You know, I'm not out for looking for anybody to get shot at, but I know the police unions also or police organizations rather, are don't want those guns on the streets either. You know, these weapons of war, but it's just a really jacked up situation. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, you know what, you know, there's the story of that mom who
ran in,
and got her kids out, you know, and she was
Without
motivated and clear thinking,
mm-hmm.
and you know, she was not going to be denied. That's incredible. So it shows me that, it was possible.
Mm-hmm.
But it just, you know, everybody loves the photos where they're all in their camo and they got all this stuff, you know, but when the rubber hits the road, it's a whole different deal. And I'm not saying that I would, you know, I certainly wouldn't sign up for that, but and I respect the folks who take that seriously.
Absolutely.
But it's not as it's presented to be. It's a whole different deal. You know?
And that mom was like threatened so that to stop telling her story. And
she's still
she waited like, I think 48 hours or something to even do her first like interview on the news, because she said she was being threatened by the cops, and it was just a mess. And her story was basically like they were like gonna arrest her for trying to get in, and she's like, "You're not gonna save my kids. I'm gonna save them. And if you need to arrest me, then do what you need to do." So that was really interesting.
It was, and the way she described, she said, "Well, I could hear gunfire down here, so I knew they weren't here yet.
The
guy wasn't here."
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, she just went in there and solved some problems, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I just think it's an indictment of this notion that, you know, we need more guns. And I did read something. It was a poll. I don't know who conducted it, but they do have some schools in Texas where the teachers are armed.
Wow.
And the parents feel safer when, you know, that these teachers have guns. But I don't see how that's a good thing.
Yeah, you know, Mr. Peña, when you were talking about that, asking your students, like, how would you feel about me being strapped? And it, like, instantly, and it never really crossed my mind, but I feel like if the students know the teachers are, it's going to prompt them to want to be armed themselves 100%. As well. They're gonna be like, oh, if the teacher's got a gun, well, then that's the attitude, right? If the teacher can do it, I can do it. If they can do it, I can do it. So I feel like that's just a war zone waiting to happen, because like, well, the teachers have guns, well, I'm gonna protect myself too then. And it's just a snowball of madness.
Yeah, it's definitely, we got to go the opposite direction.
Yeah.
All right, and you know, switching gears, Roe v. Wade, something that just, you know, out of left field, but you know, with 3 judges being appointed, you know, you kind of figured that this was the direction that they were going to go in.
Yeah.
But it just, you know, when this happened, it just gave me flashbacks of Mr. Warfel's class, and just talking about term limits, talking about how the system works for us. You got the Supreme Court, Congress, and then you have the president. Just our systems of, you know, 3 equal co-branches that work together. And, you know, during the last president's term, I felt like none of it was working. I felt like I felt like there was supposed to be this balance of power that's always, you know, since I remember Bill Clinton's term, has always been exactly that. Well, Mr. Warfel told me it was 3 equal coexisting branches of government that check each other. You know, that just go in this nice circle of democratic life.
Checks
not
and balances.
Perfect. Yeah, checks and balances. And then when Trump got into this to just completely uh a, like I felt like there was no checks or balances on anything.
For lack of a better word, aborted the checks and balances, right?
Ooh. Yeah.
But this going back to Roe v. Wade, because I think this is gonna divide the nation more than ever. I feel like a bandage has been ripped off, and now we're gonna see just nothing but blood, and just the blood being the division amongst the states. Is there? I guess my question would be, how do you feel about expanding the Supreme Court?
I think it's the only solution right now. I follow Sheldon Whitehouse. He's a senator, United States senator. I'm the state he represents. I'm not certain right now. I can't remember, but his big thing is dark money, and he wants to pass legislation to get dark money out of government. This ability, and it was as a result of Citizens United, where corporations are going to be treated as people. So his thing is this Supreme Court was bought and paid for. I think it's again, I'm talking out of school here a little bit, but I believe it's the Federalist Society who works in tandem with conservative folks to make these recommendations for here's who you should appoint. Because we know, Trump, that knucklehead, didn't come up with these names. He,
100%.
But some of the lunatics that work for him, certainly, he said, well, here's who you should appoint.
Right.
And I think everybody knew, this is Mitch McConnell's fever dream, that with these folks and Clarence Thomas and Alito from way back when, they knew that they have the votes now to upend everything, regardless of where public sentiment is. Most folks still believe Roe v. Wade should be the law of the land. Those are undeniable poll numbers, and that's a constitutional right. Gosh, I forgot what your initial question was. I'm ranting so much.
No, you're good. and expanding the court.
Oh, expanding the court. So yeah.
Because they're overreaching right now.
Totally.
I feel that just one after another. Just yesterday, the last day before they went on vacay or something like that, they just not only did they overturned the law down in New York that stood like 109 years of having guns in public, but they also had one more ruling that was to have for government state to have power over indigenous land.
Mm-hmm.
Something along those lines. Now this is just so insane to me. So my question was, how do you feel about expanding the court? And do you remember more or less when it was expanded to 9?
No, I don't. I think it was initially 6, and then when there were 9 circuit courts, they expanded to 9, I think, and now there are 13 circuit courts around the country.
Mini 13.
I believe Germany. I read this morning their Supreme Court. I think it was Germany. They're capped at 68 years. They're done at 68 years old. They have to leave the court. And I believe there's 13 of them. Again, I'm not 100% sure about that. But yeah, we definitely need to expand it to 13. I don't want to hear any nonsense about norms or anything like that, because Mitch McConnell, with Merrick Garland, he made up a rule, that said you couldn't appoint somebody in their last, the last year of their term with Obama.
Trump. Yeah. And what they do with Trump, they turn around.
Exactly.
And we already voted.
Yeah.
The people already voted the election, and he's all, there's an empty seat. We got to fill it. Yeah. Yo, how frustrating is that? And then just jumping on straight to the Democrats and Republicans. Mm-hmm. Look, here at the Underserved Movement, we take we take the facts and we move forward with the best ideas. All right, so we find ourselves being a little bit more conservative on certain things, and we find ourselves tend to be a little bit more liberal on others. But we do find we take like I said, we take the information that's available and we move forward with the best ideas here. Now, with that being said, and I kind of doze off right there. What
we're talking about the expanding the Supreme Court, and one of the things that kind of in the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, how often are we going to be expanding it to make it right? Like the Democrats come in, they expand it to kind of tilt the balance, and then the Republicans come in and they expand it to tilt the balance, and then at some point do we have 500 Supreme Court members? You know what I mean? So it's tough because in an idealistic society you wouldn't need to continually expand things to make things right. But we, again, like what we're saying is that we saw how people were rushed in to tip the balance, and how do you counter that? You know what I mean? And so one of the things huge, and I have talked about, is that, if the game is about playing dirty, like do you finally get some mud on your clothes, or do you try to keep it clean? And how often is this going to just continue to maybe a domino effect of, well, you did it, so we did it, and you did it, and we did it, and where does that start and where does that end?
Yeah, that's those are definitely things I've thought about, but I think at this moment in history, without being too overly dramatic, but this is, well, I guess I'm gonna sound overly dramatic because I do feel we're on the verge of the end of the Republic, literally,
right.
Because things that I thought were unconscionable are happening right and left, and there's another decision that the Supreme Court has already said they want to look into. I read this today or yesterday, and that's giving the states more power on redistricting state legislatures, and we know what that means. That means vote suppression.
Right, absolutely.
And they're all down for that. I would often talk to my students and say, look, demographics in this country are changing. And Black and brown folks are gaining more power, hypothetically, at least in terms of numbers. And there's this, white supremacy is making this last ditch effort to hold on to power. And this is what it looks like. And it's either going to happen or it's not. So I think that certainly want to be careful about the kinds of things we think about that we could do. But I believe it's, the house is on fire and you're going to bring a squirt gun, or you're going to bring a fire hose, and the squirt gun isn't working. The Democrats have been soft on lots of things, certainly trying to adhere to norms much more than their conservative counterparts writ large. And that's just not working anymore. I like AOC's social media feed because she's smart. She has solutions.
Yeah.
She's not and I don't see her as somebody that's like, please look at me. She's somebody who's saying she knows the danger that is present. And 100%. We need somebody like that to say, this is, it's bad. It's really bad.
Yeah. That's one thing I applaud her for, because when she does come out, and that's what means Huge always talk about. It's like, we can say like, hey, here's one option. If you don't like it, what's your option? Here's our ideas. What are your ideas? And she's constantly putting out these like, hey, why don't we do this? Well, and she outlined just in the last couple of days, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things we can do immediately.
Yeah.
And even if those are opposed, or but when people just give an opinion and there's no there's no substance to that and how to resolve the situation, then it's just an empty opinion, And so I do applaud her for like always attempting to provide options or solutions, at least to get the ball rolling,
Yeah.
Shout out to AOC. If you're watching this, I love you, girl.
Yeah, same here.
Had to get out that head. You know what I mean?
She's fantastic.
Also,
it's not the politics that even, Huge and I were talking about back in 2003 or 2004, or you're talking about with Warfel. It's now post-truth. It's no, this didn't happen. And that's that's crazy town. And so it's, and I know I shouldn't equate QAnon with conservative. Those are two different things, and I do get that. However, you have the leadership of the Republican Party pandering to these folks because they know that's how they're going to get reelected. And if you're doing that, if you're going to dance with the devil, then then the other side, you folks who believe in democracy, not just my little pet projects that I'd like to get done, and things that I are open to debate. There's certain things that aren't open to debate. And that's where it's like, okay, this is where you're going. This is where we need to go, because you're just believing lies, and that's untenable.
Yeah, there's no sitting at the table and discussing anything with these people, and that's why here we like to just take the information that we're able to show them, and back in 2003, 2004. You taught me cite your source.
Yeah.
Like cite your source. And it's just like, that doesn't exist no more.
That
you don't need that no more. And I wish that was back in 2003 because I would have gotten away with a lot of the, essays that I had to
do.
do.
Nonsense.
Yeah. All the papers that I would have to do. Mr. Warfel and Mr. Peña would be like, yo, cite your source at the end of the page.
Absolutely.
There's a certain way to cite your sources and stuff like that. To show that you really did the research, and you state your opinion based on the research you did, cited on this page online that you read. Somebody important was able to stamp your
seal of approval, validation.
That doesn't exist nowadays.
It's really hard for young people to find reputable sources. We spend a lot of time. There's so many different things we need to try to cover. And also just to be, throw on top of that COVID and the folks who come, that we serve at Garfield, oftentimes they're not worried about, for good reason, what President Knucklehead said, Trump, there's more immediate concerns. So it's trying to be attentive to the social, emotional needs of the students, help them out, get them re-engaged after COVID. And then now on top of that saying, oh, by the way, we need you invested in preserving the Republic. Otherwise, and so there's so many things going on. And I'm already thinking about the beginning of next year and what I might want to do. And there's this documentary I recommend highly. It's called Endangered. It's on HBO Max. It's about journalism and the death of journalism. It covers Mexico City, Brazil, and the United States. And it's just crazy. There's this Brazilian reporter. She was covering, Bolsonaro, COVID denier, just this crazy stuff. And the president of Brazil is calling her out by name. And she's a mom. She's a journalist. She's got a kid. And this dude's like, it's fake news. She's, saying horrible things about her. And I want to show that to the students because I think it kind of captures everything. It's like, here's the mission of education. Certainly, yes, we want you to be able to aspire to a life where you're not living check to check. That's important as well, for sure. But it's also about preserving truth and being able to recognize the truth. And the death of newspapers, the death of journalism, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
And so this had an impact on me. I'm hoping it does with the young people as well. Yeah. It's a really interesting, really good documentary.
Yeah, and that was something that we saw heavily. And not to just overly just focus on Trump or destroy his presidency, even though it's really easy to do. Just the death of the having any ounce of trust in the media, and just the whole like fake news and the alternative facts. I forget her name, Kelly Conway or whatever.
Kellyanne Conway.
Yeah, and so those are alternative facts, and it's like, oh man. So it just established scapegoats for everything and anything anyone ever says. And you got congresswomen like Marjorie Taylor, like saying that there's videos out there that she's seen that don't exist, and then
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, there you go. And she's like, all these videos of this and that happening, and then they're like, well, where are they? And she's like, well, I'm not gonna find them for you. You find them, And so
Jewish space lasers.
yeah. So it created this environment of say whatever you want without any ramifications, and it's just a horrible situation.
And guys, these are the people that are getting elected.
Yeah, she won her primary again, bro. She won her primary again.
She won re-election
by like a mile, bro.
And that's I think the Supreme Court is setting up the United States to be black and white, like just completely sever ties among states and pick a side type of thing. And that's not looking pretty. And also just the lack of traction and the lack of action. There you go. The lack of action from the Democratic Party. I just want to say screw the DNC. And just the lack of action, because AOC did say this, to extend the Supreme Court and the filibuster. Biden should just be out tough on these two topics in particular.
Yeah, dude.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the filibuster is what's been really like holding us back. That and Manchin and Sinema.
I can't wait to never mention their names again. They're it's horrible what those two are up to or not up to. But Biden for the first time did mention he's down for eliminating the filibuster, making a carve out. That happened last week because he's been Mr. Traditionalist. No, we got to abide by the norms of the Senate.
Right.
The world's the greatest deliberative body. But he did say that, and so that's good. Also, Trump made it so that you could lie and get away with it. I know politicians lie.
Oh yeah.
But at every level, you could just say, like right now, I could say, Hugh, you're not there. You're just not there. What do you mean he's sitting right there? No, he's not there. So it's that kind of bold-faced lie that's been. But I do think, I hope, and I pray, and I also saw Rel's reaction where he just kind of went like this. That's how I feel every day. It's like, oh my gosh, really?
Absolutely.
But I am buoyed by the fact that the Justice Department seems like they're making some headway into January 6th.
Right.
And if you indict Trump in a racketeering type RICO mob case.
RICO, that's what I said.
Yeah. Then you will restore some normalcy. Or not normalcy, you'll restore some legitimacy to the United States. Absent that, no.
Yeah.
We're just going to keep on drifting on until DeSantis comes in, the next lunatic, whatever.
Yeah, and perfect segue into the January 6th hearings. That's absolutely.
Yeah. This is by far something that I've more than just looked forward to and followed. This is more like finally some substance, like not OJ, in the trial, not what's the one that just recently happened? The Johnny Depp trial. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like this is January 6th, and the way they're presenting it, like a nice, almost like a PowerPoint of how the delivery is just, it's not the best, but compared to previous like things like that used to go on C-SPAN and stuff like that, this is by far probably the best I've ever seen.
No question. The Mueller report was such a disappointment. And so boring. It was engaging to folks like probably us who are, couldn't wait to hear it and these kinds of things. But the way they're doing these hearings is I'm with you. I look forward to it more than anything because I look forward to them uncovering the truth and doing it in such a purposeful way. And it's like, yeah, you guys are, you're on it. They really understand their audience. They're not saying, okay, here we are. We're going to talk down to you. We hold on the information. We're going to give it to you, which is bad teaching. It's like, no, okay, we're in this together. We're going to try to find something that's appealing and that you can understand. And it's done really well. But it has to lead to something.
No, without a doubt, it has to amount, or it's all for nothing.
Correct.
It's all for nothing. And with the first 2 impeachments that mounted up to nothing. I mean, on record, Trump is gonna have an asterisk saying that he was impeached twice, but that don't matter. That wasn't even a band-aid for the wound. That was just that was just, blowing air. And hoping it would stop. But that's exactly what Rel and yourself, Mr. P, actually they have to indict, and they have to start putting this, and it, like you said, it would restore some legitimacy. It would restore at least my belief in the system. That hey, like there's something like, hey, crime doesn't go unpunished. Lies don't, because that's the main thing. Lies, man. Deception is how do you hold the high seat in the land and get away with just lying? Just get away with lying.
Yeah.
So
and somebody mentioned like something has to happen so that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah. Yeah, they're they talk about like the role of the January 6th committee is to memorialize this and put a marker down in history. Great. And I'm with you that that has to happen. And I'm so pleased with the way it's happening. But if there isn't some precedent set, it's like, no, it doesn't matter who you are. Quit telling us these platitudes. And I'm okay with Merrick Garland Justice Department working methodically and getting it right.
Right.
Also, there's Georgia. God bless what's happening in Georgia. Trump's got trouble there.
Can you fill us in?
Pardon?
Can you know what is happening in Georgia?
So what's happening in Georgia is the state's attorney general is filed. I don't know if she's filed criminal charges yet, but they convened a grand jury. Because he's on audio saying, "Please find me just enough votes." Whatever it was, 11,800 votes, and that's a crime, and the attorney general for the state of Georgia is not letting that go. She's going to prosecute it, or if she doesn't, it won't be because for lack of effort. Put it that way. And it looks like it's moving forward. They're working in conjunction, like they were sharing some information with the January 6th committee, I think. But there's been some good news out of Georgia, so that's still very much in play. And Lindsey Graham was part of that too. He was in there asking for help. There's just so many people who, if they had any morality, and I don't know if they did, it just at the first opportunity, to just say, "Oh, cool, we can just do whatever we want." I couldn't believe how naive I was to believe that they would do otherwise, But I had some faith, misplaced, obviously, but I still can't believe how quickly all these folks just did 180s, man. Or there weren't 180s; they were always that way, and I didn't know.
Yeah. One of the interesting things that just came out, I believe it was yesterday. Liz Cheney was at a Republican conference or convention, and she was the primary speaker there, or the guest speaker. And it was somewhere in California, which I guess kind of maybe doesn't represent the Republican community very well, but it was a house full of Republicans, and she expressed that they can't both be with Trump, and they can't both support Trump and the Constitution. They have to pick one or the other. And she got a round of standing ovation. And so it's interesting to see what's happening with the Republican Party right now, being divided amongst those who are Trump loyalists and just have a bit more sense to separate themselves from what he's saying versus what is being presented to them. You know what I mean? And like even she said, it's unfortunate that we have to accept this truth. She said something along those lines in her speech. It's unfortunate that we have to accept the truth that he did these things, but it's necessary for us to continue as a respectable, reputable party, and to not just fall to the lies that were established and that are evident to be true, So it's interesting what's happening. And one thing too huge, we always talk about this. It's you know, for me, I'd always just kind of want to say, like, if you weren't so committed to a team or a side or a, you know, a political party, if flip the script, like just see it from the other way around. Like, what if Trump was a Democrat, or if Obama would have done anything like this? What would you be saying right now? Would you just be like, oh, it's fake news, it's political theater, it's this? Would you still be in the same boat? And the obvious answer is no.
Yeah, you know, we saw in the wake of Me Too, you know, what happened. I think it was Kirsten Gillibrand, the senator from New York, called out Al Franken, a spectacular United States senator,
right,
for something he did before he was even elected. You know, motioning, you know, next to that woman he was with on a USO tour, and that was it. That was enough. You know, and he stepped down. He succumbed to pressure.
Yeah.
So it's not equal. It's not a co-equal branch, you know, in terms of the way they behave.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And I am pleased that, like, there was also this the guy that ran against DeSantis, Andrew Gillum, I believe, in Florida. He's been indicted for, I forget what it was, misuse of funds or something. But if he did, you know, even though that's part of my tribe, no, that's, you know, you need to pay.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. Yeah.
But,
more people
I don't
need
see,
that attitude. More people need that attitude. Yeah.
And also, you know, I think about Bill Clinton, and I think about Epstein. You know, if he was involved in that, in, you know, I'm not making any accusations, but you know, if it turns out to be that he was part of something pretty horrible, time to fess up. Even though he was an incredible president.
Yes, there you go. And just again, like we say, like, be balanced, like be fair, be accept everything across the board, and reject everything across the board. Don't cherry pick what's best for your side or their side, or
be consistent.
You know what I mean? Be consistent.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sad when I hear these things, and I wish it wasn't true, but oh well. If you screwed up, you need to pay the piper.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Just like Liz Cheney said, it's unfortunate that we have to accept this as the truth, but we have to accept this as the truth and be better for it. Yeah.
She's living in the same world we are.
In reality.
Apparently.
Yeah. In a better reality.
Yeah.
In a more accurate reality. Yeah, absolutely.
My goodness.
Now, from a teacher's perspective, moving on, with critical race theory, I don't think, well, first of all, can you clarify, just for anybody watching, what is critical race theory at the college level, and what is critical race theory, maybe what it would mean to somebody in high school, and maybe the difference in what would be taught, if you
could. As I understand it, it's a judicial principle that's taught in the universities, in law school, about how systems can be oppressive, and there's a legal component to that. The woman who coined the term or came up with the theory, the legal theory, her name escapes me, but there's another theory that she came up with that's quite famous as well, and I wish I could remember the terms. So there's that. But in terms of high school, well, first of all, I wanted my students to know what it wasn't. So we read about what it was, because it was being cast as something that was, you know, people were just throwing that phrase out and they had no idea what they were talking about.
Correct.
So we studied it, and I couldn't really I found, I think, a few articles that were written for a more general audience, but we did read about it, and it was an article intended for educators, but we just kind of broke down a few parts of it to say, okay, here's what it is. And and it's nothing different. So are we teaching critical race theory? I would say, hell yeah, we are. It's important, maybe not that legal theory, but we are definitely teaching that no, things aren't equal, things aren't equitable, and here's why. Let's look at systems. Let's see what's going on. Again, here's the information. You guys decide. Is it by design or is it by accident? And gosh, I had a young man in my class. This was pretty cool, actually. Really smart kid. And we're watching this documentary. It was done by the San Diego Union Tribune about the barrio Logan, not Logan Heights, but anyways, right down there near our school. And it was about how there's a lot of pollution in the neighborhood because of the way it was zoned and this, that, and the other thing. And we're watching this documentary. He goes, "Hey, that's my mom." he didn't know that his mom was like the central figure of this documentary. It was pretty cool. I was like, "Whoa, that's your mom?"
That's
and
awesome.
He goes, "Man, that's my bedroom," and so that kind of made a lot of sense to me. I was like, wow, no wonder this kid's so smart. His mom's really a social justice activist.
Mm-hmm.
And so critical race theory would say that, well, why is this area zoned for industrial use when it's so close to folks who are living there? And the reason is, you go back to redlining back in, the 1930s, what have you. You can look at these redlining maps where that was zoned for industrial use. And if you were black or brown and you wanted to buy a home in these other neighborhoods, forget about it. That's systemic racism. And that's something we need to know about. And I'm not telling anything to, this guy's mother that she wouldn't know already, thankfully.
Mm-hmm.
But that is, in my estimation, critical race theory. You're looking about, okay, how did these things work in tandem, or is it just that folks just settled there and just, it just happened by accident, and the answer is no. So, you should get to shine a light on these things and see what the heck's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think growing up, even I'll speak for myself. Like growing up, I kind of didn't know how my family or roots came to settle where they settled or came to be where they be. Luckily my grandfather had a GI Bill and was able to, rest his soul. He went to Vietnam and everything, but he had a GI Bill to pay for a house, 0 down and stuff like that. Got an apartment and brought my mom and stuff like that. But I think a lot of people, a certain group of people or a certain party likes to use fear to rally their supporters or their constituents and give them false narratives of what things are. Like critical race theory has been painted to, it's against all white people. It's against all they're teaching is how white people are bad. And
that's the criticism.
That's nonsense.
Yes, there you go. Yep.
That's nonsense. I think it's important that people understand that critical race theory really is about how things came to be. Why is it that there's ghettos? Why is it that there's black neighborhoods that are impoverished, minority neighborhoods that are impoverished, and majority of suburbs are white? It's just an honest question. Why?
Yeah.
Not that there's not Mexicans or minorities in suburbs, but why is it that certain there's redlining, and a lot of I didn't even know about redlining, not because Mr. Warfel didn't want to cover it, but just because maybe it just wasn't part of the curriculum. But we're also we are the demographic that goes. The demographic that goes to the school when I went to was a big, nice mixture of everybody. And there was a lot less Caucasian students and stuff like that, but like it was a nice melting pot of just everybody. So redlining, we kind of all knew what was going. We all kind of knew, like, okay, something up. But it wasn't. I don't blame Mr. Peña. I don't blame Mr. Warfel for not, or maybe you guys did, and then it trust me, if I missed class, I missed it during class. You know what I'm saying?
There's a lot of red tape with what teachers can. My brother's currently a history and government teacher in high school, and he will be on the podcast eventually, but he'd be on here joining us and expressing his similar sentiments. But he tells me all the time, he's like, we got to be really careful. He's like, I have students in there that their parents are huge conservative or Trump supporters, and so he's got to really walk a fine line. So teachers have that it's that difficult red tape or yellow tape, whatever you want to call it, and where they can and can't go. So it's just interesting to me how certain parties even use the term truth seekers, and when history is inconvenient, they don't want to hear about it. It's not acceptable, and that's just how we have to look back at our past and to learn from it. And if you're unwilling to take a solid look at what actually happened and the truth of what was what is historically accurate, and afraid of that truth, we're never going to be able to improve upon it.
Yeah, that's well said. The last thing I want to do ever is alienate some kid.
Absolutely.
Anybody, and we're not a very diverse school.
Mm-hmm.
We're 90%, 80% Latino.
Right.
So I definitely, we're talking about issues that impact the audience, for sure. But also, I'd start with the premise that nobody has to apologize for where they come from.
Exactly.
That's 100%. And then just go from there.
Yeah.
And this notion that we're making white kids feel bad about themselves is just a fear-mongering, lying.
Yeah.
We read this, like one of my favorite texts, the kids hate it. But hopefully they'll like it, 10, 15 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Conscience of a Place, and it's about the Sand Creek massacre site in Colorado. And it's this journalist goes back to this place called Sand Creek, and it looks, beautiful. You can see this creek winding through and all that. And there's a little marker with this, Native American headdress, kind of like a, an old school coin or something like that marks the Sand Creek battleground. But it's I think since now it's changed to the Sand Creek massacre site, because that's one of those uncomfortable truths. It wasn't a battleground. It was a massacre. Here's what happened. And so we talk about the conscience of the place. Like, what's the memory that this place holds? What's the memory that this place holds? Well, you talk to Kumeyaay folks, their memory is going to be a lot different than ours. So just have some perspective, have some broaden your horizons a little bit. Don't walk around, feeling guilty. Walk around trying to take some action, by learning and trying to become a better human being.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's all it means, wrapping back around to critical race here. I think that's all it means.
Yeah, and I think we see that, Mr. Peña, a lot of times when we talk about people, when someone goes to therapy or seeks counseling or something, at the core of the issue is dealing with the actual trauma, or the actual major event or events that created the situation you're in now or in the present day. So you really absolutely have to tackle and address those truths that are inconvenient but necessary to heal. And I think that's what I see. And again, like you said, Mr. Peña, just shaping the conversation so that it's hey, we're going to be talking about these things. It is not to single anyone out, to make anyone feel bad, but it's to progress and to never devolve into that situation again, right? And I think anything that it's always goes back to it's not what you say but how you say it, and I think that's just it's a matter of how it's presented.
Giving each other the grace to make some mistakes too, because I make a ton of mistakes, because unfortunately especially in the morning, it's a lot of me talking,
Yeah.
and I try to, my whole goal all the time is less of me, more of you, you being the student. But oftentimes it's a lot of me. And, and if I'm running my mouth all the time, I'm going to say some things that I wish I could pull back, but I just try to tell them, or share with the young people that I'm going to make a ton of mistakes. Let's not be afraid to make mistakes, as long as we're not trying to hurt anybody by this, by this dialogue we're engaging in, or these topics. Because we do cover some things that are pretty, I would not discuss the kinds of things I'm talking about now 20 years ago,
Right.
And that's just because society's moved on. And I can't sit there and go out of the same playbook, so to speak, where it's like, the Paul Revere Road, and these are all great stories and whatnot. But we need to address what's happening right now, because
current events.
Otherwise, you guys know, but
absolutely. There's so many things to pick from history, and it's important to focus in on the ones that are affecting us today and now, and that we can learn from in the present day, for sure.
Winding down, Mr. Peña, do you have any questions or anything for us? Any questions, comments, concerns?
Well, first of all, a comment. You guys were right about the time flying. It feels like it's been 5 minutes.
Yeah, right.
I was worried that I wouldn't, but it's very informal. It's nice to just have a conversation.
For sure.
I really enjoyed this. I guess one question I have is, how long you guys been at this?
Very long.
As a team.
Second live stream, right, bro?
I think we've gone live a couple of times, maybe 3 times, because we did the candy giveaway. But all in all, Mr. Peña, I would say me and Huge have been friends maybe 2-3 months now. Huge, maybe.
Wow.
Yeah.
You guys have chemistry that it seems like you were
friends forever.
Rel was in my classroom with you back.
Yeah. And we have a lot of common, man. So when he's talking about how he gave you a hard time, I was that same. I was always in the high honor roll and stuff, but I was a clown. But my mom always taught me. She was like, be funny, but not get in trouble funny. And so my theory is always like, as long as I can make the teacher laugh too, I'm good. And so we had the class clowns that would get referrals and stuff, because they would offend the teacher or do stuff to the teacher. And I was the other, where I was like, you're in on the joke with me,
That was Huge's superpower. Also.
Yeah, exactly.
that was it. Yeah. There would be some times where one of my peers and other students, fellow students, would be asking questions, and I remember just raising my hand and on a different, that's how I knew Mr. Peña got me.
Right.
Mr. Peña would see what I was doing and identify the joke that I was going for, and we just laughed, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
And unfortunately, I always went full throttle, not to the point to offend somebody, but to the point to be disruptive. I was really super disruptive.
Yeah. I told a huge story, Mr. Peña, to just really quickly. My freshman year of high school, I had a brand new first year teacher who was from New York, in a little Hispanic town of ours. I'm in the armpit of California, near Arizona and Mexicali, Mexico, and so it's just desert and poor, poverty. It's hard. But she came out of here, first year teacher from New York, and rosy red cheeks and just the nicest little angel from little white blonde head lady. And I just saw her and I was like, ooh, you're gonna get it. We're friends to this day, a matter of fact, all these years later, and we talk and we love each other, because it was, again, she was in on the joke too. And the funniest story was that they had just came out with the electronic whoopee cushions, and I ordered one. I hid one behind her desk and I had the remote. It's quiet. It's silent reading time, English, silent reading time. She sat down and she started ripping them. And the class and to this day, she reminds me, she's like, nothing like, and she'll post a Facebook thing like, oh my God, my student did this today. And then she'll, if I say ha 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 or something, and she'll be like, yeah, nothing like the electronic whoopee cushion, so it's a good, and you make these bonds you and Huge have, and it's really important. And again, I wouldn't be talking about that if it didn't have that lasting impact on me as well. That she was included in on the joke. She liked it. She thought it was
Mhm.
funny and clever, and so yeah, me and Huge were cut from the same cloth. I also feel like we've been friends all our lives, the way we talk and get along. But it's just for my part with you, thank you for your time.
Of course.
It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor, and we absolutely want to have you on as often as you're available to do so. So thank you again, man.
I would love to come back. I would love to come back and discuss maybe some indictments.
Absolutely.
Like if there's some movement or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm not wishing ill upon somebody just for the sake of that, but that justice does matter and that things will get done
for the sake of justice and the future.
Absolutely. Anything else, Mr. Peña?
No, I think that's quite comprehensive for right now. But
yeah.
But if you'll have me, I'd love to come back.
Awesome. Absolutely. Open invitation. Open invitation.
Now, anything you want to say to the public? Any side notes, comments, anything you would like to say to the audience?
Gosh, there's so much. I don't know. I'll just end with one of my favorite quotes, or my favorite quote about education. I never met a kid with a dysfunctional relationship to learning, but I've met plenty with a dysfunctional relationship to school. So schools need to do a better job. We need to step up. And that means all sorts of things. And not to say that, and there are some incredible things happening. I go into, my colleagues' classrooms at Garfield, and when I'm lucky enough to be in other, schools, there's some just stuff going on like, whoa, this is so good. So there's a lot of really, really good things going on. Kids are willing to learn. We just have to be there and provide some interesting opportunities and attend to their, social emotional needs. That's it. Yeah.
That's right. And you heard it here. The special guest, the 2-time teacher of the year.
That's awesome.
Daniel Peña.
That's right.
And you got the engineer, Rel. And of course, your host with the most, Huge. And this is the Underserved Movement. We'll catch you on the next one, guys.
Right on. Thank you, man.
Thank you, Mr. Peña. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Peace.
Bye-bye.